You're listening to episode number 16 of Overprescribed. Welcome to Overprescribed, the show that raises America's awareness on pharmaceutical medications in this country, all in an effort to help you, the everyday consumer, to live the safest, healthiest, and most informed medication experience possible. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mika Pollock, and I have a question for you. Have you ever heard of these drugs before? Levaquin, which also goes by the name levofloxacin, Cipro, which also goes by the name ciprofloxacin, or Avelox, which goes by the name moxifloxacin? Well, whether you have heard of these drugs or not, these are drugs from the drug class called fluoroquinolones. This is a group of antibiotics that are commonly prescribed all across America. So common that it has been estimated that over 30 million prescriptions for these types of medications are prescribed on an annual basis. Now, we've all heard of antibiotics before, but what are they meant to do? Well, antibiotics are medications used to stop bacterial growth. They can slow the growth of bacteria or even kill bacteria. In general, Americans have long come to trust antibiotics as those drugs have helped millions. And they are some of the first-line treatments we may hear of or see firsthand, depending on your occupation, that are prescribed when one is inflicted with, say, a urinary tract infection or even a sinus infection, for example. However, while antibiotics may be good for a lot of illnesses, and it is, again, a first-line treatment to treat bacterial infections, there's something happening to some people when they are exposed to certain antibiotics, particularly antibiotics in the fluoroquinolone family. People are getting floxed. Yes, that's right, I said floxed, F-L-O-X-E-D. Now, it's not a term that I made up. Actually, I'm not sure of its origin, but it's a term that has been used to describe the state of a person's body after they have experienced the devastating effects that may have happened after taking an antibiotic from the fluoroquinolone family of antibiotics. And it plays on the drug name of most of these drugs, which normally, although not always, have flox or F-L-O-X spelled out somewhere in the name. Now, the first time I ever heard of the term floxed was when I came across a book while browsing a popular online retailer's book inventory for books related to pharmaceutical medications. This book was called Bitter Pills, and it was written by Stephen Fried. It was a personal story about how his wife had taken one pill from the fluoroquinolone family of drugs, and it completely changed her life. She ended up in the hospital within hours of taking the pill and developed catastrophic symptomatology that impacted things like her nervous system and even her mental state. Now, the book was written years ago. I think it was published in the late 1990s. But it is considered one of the most popular books on pharmaceutical medication issues and is still relevant and read today. Now, I don't know Stephen personally, but his book sent me on a trajectory of discovery about fluoroquinolones for the past several years, and it has prompted me to be hypervigilant about any antibiotic that comes into my own home. For some reason, some people are experiencing a toxicity so severe that it is life-changing, and the adverse drug reactions from these people are sometimes irreversible. From when the first fluoroquinolone entered the U.S. market many years ago to the entrance of new fluoroquinolones since that first one, to even the withdrawal of at least 4 fluoroquinolones from the U.S. market due to serious adverse drug reactions, so concerning that the only logical recourse to protect public health was to pull those drugs from the market entirely, let's just say that there's a long history of these drugs and a lot of detail behind how often they've been prescribed, what safety signals the FDA has received, or has not received over the years, and so on and so on. Now, I won't get into all of that in this episode. I actually want to take a moment and fast forward to 2018. And why? Well, because in July of 2018, the FDA issued a safety announcement about not one or two of these drugs, but the entire class of drugs of fluoroquinolones. This is not the FDA's first safety announcement about fluoroquinolones, but it's a recent one, and it's an important one. And I shared this on Twitter, I think a week or two ago, but I'm going to share it again. And the full safety announcement is titled, FDA reinforces safety information about serious low blood sugar levels and mental health side effects with fluoroquinolone antibiotics, requires label changes. So on July 10th, 2018, the full safety announcement reads as follows. The Food and Drug Administration is strengthening the current warnings in the prescribing information that fluoroquinolone antibiotics may cause significant decreases in blood sugar and certain mental health side effects. The low blood sugar levels can result in serious problems, including coma, particularly in older people, and patients with diabetes who are taking medicines to reduce blood sugar. We are making these changes because our recent review found reports of life-threatening low blood sugar side effects and reports of additional mental health side effects. We are requiring these updates in the drug labels and to the patient medication guides for the entire class of fluoroquinolones. This affects only the fluoroquinolone formulations taken by mouth or given by injection. Blood sugar disturbances, including high blood sugar and low blood sugar, are already included as a warning in most fluoroquinolone drug labels. However, we are adding that low blood sugar levels, also called hypoglycemia, can lead to coma. Now, across the fluoroquinolone antibiotic class, a range of mental health side effects are already described under central nervous system effects in the warnings and precautions section of the drug label, which differed by individual drug. The new label changes will make the mental health side effects more prominent and more consistent across the systemic fluoroquinolone drug class. The mental health side effects to be added to or updated across all the fluoroquinolones are disturbances in attention, disorientation, agitation, nervousness, memory impairment, and serious disturbances in mental abilities called delirium. Fluoroquinolone antibiotics are approved to treat certain serious bacterial infections and have been used for more than 30 years. They work by killing or stopping the growth of bacteria that can cause illness. Without treatment, some infections can spread and lead to serious health problems. It continues to read as, patients should tell your healthcare professionals if you are taking a diabetes medicine when your healthcare professional is considering prescribing an antibiotic, and also if you have low blood sugar or symptoms of it while taking a fluoroquinolone. For patients with diabetes, your healthcare professional may ask you to check your blood sugar more often while taking a fluoroquinolone. Early signs and symptoms of low blood sugar include confusion, dizziness, feeling shaky, unusual hunger, headaches, irritability, pounding heart or a very fast pulse, pale skin, sweating, trembling, weakness, and unusual anxiety. Discuss with your healthcare professionals how to treat yourself if you suspect low blood sugar. Symptoms of low blood sugar can progress and become life-threatening, so seek help immediately by calling 911 or going to an emergency room if you experience more serious symptoms, including confusion, inability to complete routine tasks, blurred vision, seizures, or loss of consciousness. Patients should also tell your healthcare professional immediately if you notice any changes in your mood, behavior, or thinking. Read the patient medication guide you receive with your fluoroquinolone antibiotic prescription, which explains the benefits and risk of the medicine. Healthcare professionals should be aware of the potential risk of hypoglycemia, sometimes resulting in coma, occurring more frequently in the elderly and those with diabetes taking an oral hypoglycemic medicine or insulin. Alert patients of the symptoms of hypoglycemia and carefully monitor blood glucose levels in these patients and discuss with them how to treat themselves if they have symptoms of hypoglycemia. Inform patients about the risk of psychiatric adverse reactions that can occur after just one dose. Stop fluoroquinolone treatment immediately if a patient reports any central nervous system side effects, including psychiatric adverse reactions or blood glucose disturbances, and switch to a non-fluoroquinolone antibiotic if possible. Stop fluoroquinolone treatment immediately if a patient reports serious side effects involving the tendons, muscles, joints, or nerves, and switch to a non-fluoroquinolone antibiotic to complete the patient's treatment course. Healthcare professionals should not prescribe fluoroquinolones to patients who have other treatment options for acute bacterial sinusitis, acute bacterial exacerbation of chronic bronchitis, and uncomplicated urinary tract infections, because the risk outweigh the benefits in these patients. FDA continues to monitor and evaluate the safety and effectiveness of medicines after we approve them and they go on the market. In the case of fluoroquinolones, we reviewed reports of cases submitted to FDA and the published medical literature of apparently healthy patients who experienced serious changes in mood, behavior, and blood sugar levels while being treated with systemic fluoroquinolones. Some of the mental health side effects are already listed in some of the labels, and some events are listed using similar terms, but not all fluoroquinolone labels provided this information. As a result, we are requiring several changes to the warnings and precautions section in the fluoroquinolone's drug labels. Details will be added describing hypoglycemic coma and the new subheading Psychiatric Adverse Reactions, found under Central Nervous System Effects, will help clarify and identify the mental health side effects. We previously communicated about other safety issues associated with fluoroquinolones in May of 2016 that was related to restricting use for certain uncomplicated infections. July of 2016, that was related to disabling side effects. In August of 2013, related to peripheral neuropathy. And July of 2008, which was related to tendinitis and tendon rupture. We urge patients and healthcare professionals to report side effects involving fluoroquinolones or other drugs to the FDA MedWatch program using the information in the Contact FDA box at the bottom of the page. Okay, that's the end of the safety announcement section. So I'm going to include a link to this here on the show notes, but if you click on the link, you'll see the safety announcement would be the main body at the very top of this announcement, of course. But after that, you'll see several sections where you actually have to click on the drop-down box to read them. There's a section listed here, or a section noted here, for a list of FDA-approved fluoroquinolones for systemic use. So it's actually pointing out to you specific names. I'm seeing here on the list, let's see, 1, 2, 3, at least 7 brand names. Also listing their active ingredient names. So for example, Avelox is on the list, or moxifloxacin. According to the footnotes here, Avelox goes by both brand and generic names. There's also a drug called Baxdela. Active ingredient, other name is delafloxacin. Cipro, very popular fluoroquinolone, is on the list as well. It goes by the name as well as ciprofloxacin, and that's available in both brand and generic formulations. There's also the brand name of Cipro Extended Release, which also has the exact same name for its active ingredient name, and that's available through brand and generic. There is a brand name here listed by the name of Factive, and that also goes by the name gemifloxacin. That also is available in brand and generic. Levaquin's on the list, goes by levofloxacin, again, available in brand generic. And then it also has a drug by the name of Ofloxacin, which goes by the same name as well. That is also available in brand and generic form. The next section here on this full safety announcement link is facts about fluoroquinolones. And it's just basically giving you about 5 or 6 facts about the drug class, some things that just kind of common things that people may know, but, talks about common side effects from the fluoroquinolone drug class, like nausea, diarrhea, headache, typical possible side effects from a lot of drugs, really. They talk about symptoms of serious side effects here. According to this, under the facts about fluoroquinolone section, those serious side effects include unusual joint or tendon pain, muscle weakness, a pins and needles tingling or prickling or pricking sensation, numbness in the arms or legs, confusion, hallucinations, and significantly low blood sugar levels, of course. Also under the facts section, I'm seeing here a list of the mentioning there's several brand and generic names, which we ran over some of those. And also that what fluoroquinolones are. They're a class of antibacterial medicines approved to treat certain kinds of infections caused by bacteria. And it also talks about which patients may not be ideal for prescribing fluoroquinolones too, which is also somewhat mentioned in the safety announcement. And the last 2 sections on the safety announcement link that, again, I'll include in the show notes, references data summary. So it talks about some data that the FDA reviewed in the post-marketing era of these drugs. And it also mentions a link about related information, includes links to other things. So it may say, hey, if you want to read up on some more things related to this, there's a link about FDA approving safety label changes for fluoroquinolones. There's even a link here for fluoroquinolone antimicrobial drug information. And there's a section I thought was interesting, but I think is very relevant too for them to do that, where you can actually click on this link and learn more about the FDA's drug review process and how they ensure drugs are safe and effective. I think, again, it's a very appropriate link to put there, considering the safety announcement here for drugs that were approved by the FDA. So I think they want to give also consumers some assurance in terms of what their process is and how thorough they do go forward with their process to make sure drugs are safe. Okay, before we end this episode, I just have about 6 or 7 more things to mention to you about fluoroquinolones. First, I want everyone to know that not all antibiotics are fluoroquinolones. So, for example, amoxicillin, that's a very common antibiotic. I've had that prescribed to my kids more than once. I've had it myself. That is not a fluoroquinolone. Also, there are more than just the 3 or 4 fluoroquinolone drugs that I mentioned at the top of the episode. And I'll try to include some sort of links in the show notes so that you can see a list of more fluoroquinolones by name. Also, I want to make sure that folks are aware that there's a constituency of medical professionals, researchers, and others in healthcare who believe, and it seems to be backed also by FDA prior safety announcements, that fluoroquinolones should not be used for the first line treatment for certain infections, particularly minor infections. So you may want to ask your doctor if you are being prescribed a fluoroquinolone, if this really is the drug for you, if there are other options for you, and if not, why this one is going to be used as a first line treatment for your condition, depending on your condition. I also want to mention to folks that for me, in doing some of my research on fluoroquinolones and based on the things that I've read and heard and seen about these drugs, some of the most serious adverse drug reactions of concern to me have been reports of tendon rupture, irreversible nerve damage, and damage to the aorta. So these are just risk factors, of course, or risks that could happen from, or rare results, I suppose, from the use of fluoroquinolones. But those adverse drug reactions are just some of the more serious ones that really stood out to me. I also want to point out to folks that there's actually something called fluoroquinolone assisted disability. And I've seen this written more than once. It goes by the acronym FQAD. And according to one link, I'll make sure I share it in the show notes. Fluoroquinolone assisted disability, or FQAD, in patients, it references individuals who have reported or were reported to be previously healthy and have suffered debilitating side effects from fluoroquinolone use. The link I'm going to include, which comes from a website called drugwatch.com, also goes on to state that FQAD sufferers are patients who have been given fluoroquinolones when their conditions could have been cured with a far less powerful medication. And just two more things I want to mention about fluoroquinolones before we end this episode. One, there is also evidence that there's an overprescribing, if you will, of these types of drugs. It kind of leans in from what I just mentioned about the questionability of first-line treatment use for these types of medications for certain conditions or illnesses or infections. And then lastly, a lot of times when I produce an episode for Overprescribe, my intention is to serve as a voice to prevent problems in everyday consumers, particularly as they may relate to your medication use. But sometimes, I'm speaking to people out there who've already been harmed by medication or who are already experiencing issues or suspect strongly that they're experiencing issues as a direct result of their medication. And if you're that person today and you're listening and you believe you may have been harmed by a fluoroquinolone, I want you to know that there's support out there for you. As a matter of fact, in doing some of my research, I found a nonprofit by the name of Fluoroquinolone Antibiotic Toxicity Syndrome Network. Their website is fatsn.org. I'll also include a link to that in the show notes, but they are just one group out there of, I would say, at least several that I've seen, particularly on social media, that are offering support to people who have been harmed by a fluoroquinolone, by people who have been floxed. And these networks are people with a strong voice, and they are constantly talking about their experiences and using their experiences to help each other, to support each other, and to raise more of an awareness about antibiotic toxicity, particularly antibiotic toxicity and use as a result of fluoroquinolones. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave us a review, share our episode, share our show with your friends and family. And don't forget to visit us on Twitter at Overprescribed or @_Overprescribed. And you can also visit our website at www.overprescribedpodcast.com.